Session 2. Today we're going to be going over. Okay, first of all, I guess for anyone who hasn't joined the Discord, just like make sure you join. I think we went over this in previous sessions, but how you can join the Discord is you can enter your group. You can enter like !group, and then you basically this first part over here it says constant, and then you'll want to enter Wednesday followed by your group number. So like if you don't know which group you're in, you can like ask your mentor in this session. I think most of you should be in the Discord already. Okay. So yeah, this session we're going to be going over objects. So it's sort of like more in depth of what we mentioned last session, classes, and also starting our game. Okay, so objects are like basically the long story short is it just makes code easier to reuse. So the way you can think about like an object is, okay, we're just gonna go with this box analogy here, right? So if an object is like, you can think, for example, maybe in Python you might have like a dog object, right? And with that, within that object, you have like variables, which often they're like attributes of the object. So when we did like the Pygame rectangle, for example, that you could consider an object, and it would have different variables or attributes. Well, variables which represent like different attributes, which would be like, oh, maybe rectangle dot height or rectangle dot x coordinate, right? So those would be like the sub the smaller boxes within the object. You can think about it that way. Yeah, so kind of like I mentioned before, pygame.rect would be an example of an object. You can also like create your own objects and give them different attributes. Usually objects like you will make maybe like a player character would be considered an object, or like a platform, right? Usually those would be objects with like different attributes. Also, if anyone ever has like any questions, just drop them into the chat, and then one of the mentors can answer, or even if like another one of you knows an answer, you can just answer in the chat. Yeah, so in case you haven't noticed, like there's always these dots after an object, and that's basically the way we access items within it. I think we also mentioned this before, but you could have like you can technically have an object within an object. Like that's kind of when you have multiple dot operators. So maybe like student name dot last name would return ma, for example. And so we're just gonna like dive right into our first exercise and like let you try things out, because the best way to learn is to try it. So what you're gonna do is you can just click on these two links. So for anyone who doesn't have the slide links, you can usually find them on the website, but I will just put them in the chat this time. But for future reference, you just want to go search up Schoolic Ignite, right? Go to schoolicignite.com. And if you go into sessions, Flare, and scroll down, you would be able to find the slides and the recordings here. And oh yeah, for anyone who is like wondering what exercise submission, it should be up now. So if you go in student links, you can see the score sheet here, and you can see the Flare exercise submission form here, right? And it should look something like this. All right. Yeah, so we actually get breakout room time for this, but basically, you're only going to need to edit the main file. The leaves is like, it's like a predefined object for you, so you don't have to edit that. And basically your goal is to use this object, give it like different attributes, and make leaves on top of the trees. Yeah, we can get 15 minutes. I'm going to say 15 minutes. We can do breakout rooms for 15 minutes and then come back. And if anyone like doesn't finish, you can always come back to it later. Yeah.
I'm going to open up rooms. Just a note that you might be in a different room with a different mentor this time, just because a few of our mentors have midterms today. So, right, open rooms.
Okay. Yeah. So hopefully everyone was able to make some progress on this. Yeah. So moving on, we're gonna cover classes, and also if anyone like didn't finish or they still have like questions, I'll definitely try to like make enough time in the breakout room. So like if it's like, oh, this project it didn't work out, I'm not sure like what's going on. You can in the breakout rooms, you can kind of like go back over anything and just like get that one-on-one, not one-on-one time, but yes, you'll be able to talk to your mentor. Um, and also, like I said, just you can just throw questions in the chat. Like I know, um, it's like harder to like debug specific things, but it just like if you have general questions, once again, like use the chat. If it's a not breakout room, if it's like the main session, you can use the chat. If it's breakout rooms, like definitely suggest on meeting. Okay, so we have basically classes. They're actually kind of similar to objects, but the difference is that objects are generally like they refer to a specific thing, right? So an object, like in this example over here, okay. In this example over here, you can see that like each of these snakes is like considered an object because they're like unique. Whereas the class snake is more like a general sort of like, well, it's a class, right? A class of objects. So you can kind of think of like um how do I describe it? I would say classes are, classifying like a group of things and objects are like a specific like the actual well I mean the word kind of speaks for itself. It's an object, right? So for example here like a dog would be like just dogs in general, and then for you would create an object with a class. So like okay, here there's like a quick I guess like anatomy of a class, if you will. So you have like the name, the self keyword, which we will get to later. Initiate like we'll cover all of these in the next few slides. um So yeah, first of all, we have like this strange, if you haven't seen this before, it might look a bit strange. So the initiation function is like, it kind of tells you what sort of properties to initialize an object with. So as you can see over here, it's like every time you create like an object of the dog class, like we'll get to creating objects later, you'll have it'll have a variable that's called num legs that's set to 4 and a sound that's set to woof. So like I said, here's like the example. This thing over here is uh class itself. And okay, so the self keyword we're going to get to. Okay, so first of all, like you have properties which are basically like different attributes of a class. So kind of self-explanatory, as you can see like the examples here, name, age, gender. So like in a game you might have like character speed, right? So okay, so oh yeah, one more thing to kind of note. So when you initiate, let me see, I think there's examples. Yes, there are examples. But basically when you initiate like an object of this class, you pass in all of the arguments, like these will be your arguments, right? So you might say like, I'll get to the example later, but then you set the variable for the object itself to the arguments that you pass in, right? So if you like switch them around for some reason, then um, I don't know why anyone would do that, but the actual, if you call like self.age on this some person you create and you switch these variables around, then you're just gonna get the name. So anyways, okay, yes. I guess we have enough we have enough information to answer the first quick question. I feel like, do we though? Yeah, well. I actually skipped that. But yes, the self argument also always comes first. So There's obviously at least one thing here, but if there's anything else. So what's wrong with this code? Okay. Also, you can just like go into Top Hat and do just like enter this join code here. And yeah. So I think what we'll do is if we can have more than one screen share at the same time, then that's like the best. Otherwise, like I'll leave this screen share on and then after everyone answers, we can just see like the results.
Yep, I've opened up the question on Top Hat too.
Do you think we can both screen share at the same time? Because I think it shows like the options.
Options. Yeah, I'm not sure, but no, I think it'll switch off. But I can switch my screen right now if you want.
Okay, let's try. Because I think there's like a multiple participants can share simultaneously. There's an option on Zoom. So
I think it might replace it.
so everyone got a good look at the code, right?
I'm also split my screen maybe.
Oh yeah, that works.
It'd be a little hard to see still.
You can also move the slides tab in the bottom left.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so I kind of gave that away already, but I know I did kind of skip over it, so. Okay. How do I, oh, do I have to screen share? Okay. Yes. So yeah, the answer is I kind of, yeah, I feel like it's better to cover like more stuff before this quick question, but anyways, that will be for next time. Yeah, so basically this self keyword here, it needs to be the first variable that's passed into Python because it's not, what? Maybe the slides, I feel like the slides might have gotten mixed up. I think the slides got mixed up. Anyways, yeah, so how the self keyword is, you can think of it as a placeholder. Here, hang on. There are definitely examples here. Okay, yeah, so here's like, yeah, one way to think of it is kind of like, when you create the self keyword, God, okay, I'm going to enter stuff. Let me type. Yeah, so if you create like an object called like Jimmy equals person or something, right? So this is how you would create the object. You just have the variable, the name of the object, and you pass in the parameters. So these are like the three that you would actually pass in. The self keyword is kind of like the way that you're gonna access yeah, it's like the my keyword, right? So like the attributes of, here, let me just type the example. So Jimmy equals Jimmy, age 16, whatever, NA, who knows? It's a strange. And the way that like the self keyword is almost like a placeholder. This is how I like to think of it anyways. So it's like a placeholder for the name of the actual object. So if you wanted to access like the 15 from Jimmy, you would just type jimmy.age, right? And that will return you like 15. If you say print jimmy.age, that gives you 15. Now if you made like another one called Bob, right? then if you wanted to get age, you would type bob.age. So I think that's and like one thing to note is like the self keyword, you don't actually have to use, obviously like stick with using the word self because that's Python convention and you don't want bugs, but technically if you name this, like B, you could just like put some letter as long as it's consistent, and Python, like the compiler will be like, okay, so this is gonna be how you're gonna reference the object, right? So, but anyways, like I said, use self because it's convention. There's like nothing special about, the word self itself. It's not like a magic keyword or something, just convention. Yeah. Yes. So like I kind of mentioned this already. Um, so yeah, here's the example. And I think I mentioned this already, but you don't actually pass in like self as an argument. Okay, so next thing we're going to start building our first class. So yeah, everyone can follow along here. I'm gonna just like open. I'm guessing you already have Visual Studio Code open. You want to open that? Create a file dot. Okay, make a file called snake.py. Also, the one thing to note is like you use something called like Pascal case or camel case when naming classes. So basically every word is capitalized. The first letter of every word in a name is capitalized. And then for variables, usually I would say convention, you actually use like underscores between words. So that's kind of how you differentiate. But most important, like if you're working on any group project, just like talk to your, whoever else is working with you. Okay, so yeah. New file. So basically, I'm gonna go through this pretty quickly. So basically how you say that, you're gonna, my VS Code is not responding. Basically, you're gonna type in like class.snake. So this is the name of your class and you're indicating with the class keyword that you are actually creating a class. Then what you want to do is you want to set the initiation function. So it's like, what sorts of attributes is this class going to have? And like, what else is going to happen whenever we create an object of the snake class? So in this case, it's like anytime we create a snake object, it's going to just like print to the console. Then you can create object. You can like type, honestly, you can just copy and, well, I guess up to you. If you want to type it, you can type it, or you can just go in here and like copy and paste it. Make sure you fix the indentation though. So maybe just type it. And then you'll notice here, like what should happen is when you create this snake object, it'll set the snake, so the my snake dot name is going to be set to Buttercup, right? So that's if you want to access it, and then it also prints to the console. Yeah, so actually I'm not going to bother typing it. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You go through here and like the way that you're gonna the way that you can access like the variables once again is you use like the dot operator followed by like whichever attribute. In this case, there's only one, and you can actually set like another variable to that. One thing to note is if you set like the snake name variable to, my snake.name, but then you change like, if you change the name to something else, like the snake name variable is gonna stay the same because it references an actual value, not like, what's the word for this? There's like when you reference a list with a when you have like a very, I'm not going to go over this, but there's basically some things to note. Like whenever you're referencing lists with variables, like a variable that references a variable that references a list, if you change a list, like since both of them are actually referring to the list, then they'll both change. But anyways, that's kind of advanced stuff that's probably not relevant for this session. So, okay, next quick question. What is going to be the outputs? And yes. We can. All right, there. That's pretty good. Okay, and yes, the correct answer is C. Looks like everyone got that right, so I will just be pretty quick. So basically what happens is when you create a person, an object of the person class, it'll run the code in initiation, right? And so you always have this like self keyword here for the initiation function just to like let it know. Basically it allows you to actually access these variables. Let me check. Am I okay? I'm sorry, I thought I was muted. Yeah, so actually it allows you to access these attributes. If you don't have this, it should throw an error when you're trying to access these attributes. So yeah, you create a person and you'll run through this thing and set. It'll create an attribute called name for the person and set it to George, and then it'll just print this attribute. So yeah. I did mention this like a while ago, but you can put objects inside objects. One example of when you might do this, like in terms of a game design aspect, is for a player object, you might have like, I don't know, a gun object or something. And then even within that gun object, you want to create bullet objects whenever someone presses the spacebar. So that's like an example where you have several objects within each other.
Right, you might have to reshare your screen.
Oh yes. I knew something was wrong. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm muted. No, I'm not muted, but oh, I'm not sharing screen. Okay. Okay, what was I saying? I was just over here. There's not much to look at. Okay. Yeah, so here's like another example here. They use like the parachute and the honestly, I don't know that much about this space, so I can't properly describe this, but you could say like the parachute houses the rover, which also has a camera. So like the camera is an object within the what is it? Within this within the rover. Anyways, like the way you would access that, you just use like multiple dot operators. So you would probably do like parachute dot rover. Is this the rover? Yeah. So that's like the syntax. In terms of code, if you actually try to code it, like you should be able to just like use the same functionality. Usually, let's see. Okay. I'm actually, if we do get to an example, I'll actually show it, but I don't think it's necessary to show an example of objects within objects right now. Just know like the way you access them, like you just have multiple dot operators. Okay, maybe there is no, there is no. Okay, yeah, there you go. There is an example. So, for example, for the snake class, maybe the snake is like some sprite in a game, and you want to give it like a Pygame rectangle as an attribute, right? So, yeah, what ends up happening is because you set an object for one of the attributes of the snake, you end up having like an object within an object, and just use like the first dot is like, okay, access this rectangle attribute of the snake, and then so now this rect over here is referencing this, right? And then you want to access the dot x from the rect object, the built-in attribute. Okay. Next we have imports, and they're basically like a bunch of pre-built functions. So usually, like for example, Pygame is, I believe it would be called a library, and it basically has like a bunch of classes and functions and objects that are ready for us. Well, actually, sorry, classes and functions, because anything that you like create from a class is called an object. So yeah, classes and functions that just make it like life easier for you. So you don't have to like recode everything from scratch. You can also make other files yourself, like especially when you start building more code. So like over here, I think I mentioned this. Yes. So naming convention for class, you use a capital letter for the first letter of the word. Yeah, so as you like start getting bigger programs, like good practice is to make like extra files for specific classes or like parts of your game. So in this case, like we create like a snake.py file and create some function here, right? Obviously this should be a more complex function if you actually want to do this. And then how you can do that is, and then how you can use it is you can import snake, right? And basically the way you access the function within it is you would type like snake.snake with the two brackets. So like this is saying from this snake file, run the snake function. In case you have like, I don't know, another function that's like, I don't know, potatoes, and it also happens to have some function called snake, then this lets you know what it is. However, if you know like for a fact that you're not gonna have naming like issues, you can always just okay, the color coding's wrong, but you can always import like the exact class, and that way you don't have to like specify which file it's from, right? So you can just run it directly. Okay. I mentioned already, like basically everything that you know if you've ever imported like math or OS, it's basically a pre-built code once again, but generally like a lot more complex than anything we would ever come up with on our own. Yeah, so you can import specific stuff from the class. Yeah, so the rest of our session is just going to be dedicated towards like exercise, and you can also start on your game if you want. I know there's like you won't have learned too much by then, but basically I would say try out the exercise, and then after you're done that, you can start. And since you're in the breakout rooms with your mentors, if you have questions about other things, you can ask them and they can try and answer the questions. So, let's see. Yeah, and after you're done, you can just submit your code in this link. And like I said, if you can't find the slides for some reason or the links, they're all on the Scholastic Ignite websites. So we can just do breakout rooms basically for the rest of session. An end of session poll.
I
Do we have
think
an end of
one.
session poll?
I don't think we have one this session, so
Pardon?
I don't think we have one this session.
Okay. In that
I
case,
think.
if nobody has any questions, you're free to go. Obviously, mentors stay, but
Thank you.